Hare Krishna, everybody. Thanks for coming out to the Hare Krishna temple tonight. Everything that I say tonight is inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Aganatimradasham Yanujana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militamina Tajmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Tarati Svapadantikam. My message for you today is to go home and get a goat. Now, if this seems a little silly, let me get a little bit of context behind it, lest you go home and tell everybody when they asked you what you learned at the temple was that you were supposed to go home and get a goat. There's a story of a lady. I used to live in South America for about 5 years. I lived in a village for 2 of those years, had more goats than people. So this story maybe resonates a little bit more there. How many of you have any interaction with goats? I had a couple of pet goats when I was a kid, and I lived in this village, so I know a lot of goats. So this story really sinks deep for me. But there was a lady that had a lot of kids and a lot of problems. Her kids were really rambunctious, and she was at her wit's end. She didn't have anyone to help her with these kids. So she went to the village guru, the village wise man, and she asked the guru, "What can I do? I'm in this situation. My life is hectic. I don't know what to do. I'm at the wit's end with all of these kids." And the guru thought, he said, "You know what you need is some goats." Oops. Go and buy a goat. Sorry about that. Go and buy a goat and bring it home and let the goat live in the house with you and the children. The lady thought, well, I don't see how that's going to help me with my problem. But she was obedient, and she went and got a goat, and she brought it in with the kids. And the kids went wild because there was a goat in the house. And she didn't know what to do. The kids were bouncing off the walls, and the goats were eating all the furniture. And she just didn't know what to do, so she went to the village elder again, to the guru, and said, "What am I supposed to do? This is not working. Your advice was bad advice." And he thought about it, and he said, "You know what you need is another goat." And so he sent her off to find another goat, and she brought another goat to the house. And there was double the trouble. The problems that the goat were making in the house were just double as much. So she went back, he told her to get another goat, and she did it again, and this was not working, so she quit going to see the guru. And she was at the community well one day, and the guru happened to be walking by, and he saw her, and he said, "Hey, how's your problem? Did it fix it? Did the goats help you?" She said, "Oh, no, there's no problem at all. Everything's great. I don't need your help anymore, guru." And so he said, "Okay, well, that's wonderful. I'm glad my advice helped. Maybe you should get rid of those goats now. Don't you think that's a little too much?" And so she said, "Okay, yeah, great advice. I'll follow it right away." She went home and she got rid of the goats. And then she had all the kids help her clean up the house with all the mess that the goats made. And then she looked around. The kids were all tired out from helping clean up the goats. And they were all, safe in bed. She looked around in the tranquility of the evening and she said, "This is pretty great. My life is pretty tranquil without all these goats in the house. Things are pretty nice around here." So the moral of the story is all it takes is a switch in your perception. The goats changed her perception of her situation. Her situation before the goats and after the goats was the exact same. But she found herself in much more tranquility after the goats because the chaos that the goats brought into the situation changed her perception. So changing back and forth our perception, changing our spiritual perception, is a skill that we can learn. We all have plenty of goats in our life. We have plenty of things that bring chaos into our lives. And we bring more chaos into our lives, oftentimes on the advice of well-meaning people. And we create all sorts of situations in our lives that if we just simplify, we can get back to the perception, a spiritual perception, that changes the way that we look at things. In the scripture, it talks about Samadarshinaha, this equal vision that saintly people have. They go through life seeing all living beings as having the spirit soul, a super soul within them. They recognize God within the heart of every living being. And so they come across an ant, they come across a tree, they come across different people in different walks of life, and they see all of these different categories of living species of being the same. They see with equal vision of this Samadarshinaha. And they don't judge people differently. They don't judge animals and plants. They have this equal vision of love of God because they recognize that the God that's in their heart, that they love, is also in the heart of every other living being. The only difference in how we see this world is in the mood in which we see it. We can either see the world in a mood of envy, or we can see the world in the mood of love. If we have that Samadarshinaha, we see everything with love, because we love God and we recognize God in the heart of every living being. And so we love every other living being because God is within their heart. And we move through the world in this way. Most of us, though, aren't at such an advanced spiritual position. Most of us are going through this world looking at things in a mood of envy. That's what got us into this world in the first place, is we were envious of God. We wondered, why does God get to enjoy everything? Why can't I enjoy some of the things? Why do I have to be a servant all the time? Why do I always have to serve God? Can't somebody serve me? And so we come into this world because God said, well, I don't want any unwilling servants here. I want loving devotional servants. So he sent us out into this material world so that we can be served, so that we can have lots of different situations where people serve us, where we get into situations where we can serve our own senses. And he wanted to see if we like it, or if we're going to recognize that this trouble that we put ourselves into, just like the lady putting the goats into her home, that's what it's like coming out into this material world. We're putting a bunch of goats into our home. And this problem that we seem to have at the beginning of being envious of God goes away when we come down into this material world and we see all of the trouble that this material world trying to be envious of God puts into our lives. And so our goal is to go back home to Godhead, to get rid of all of these things, get rid of these detachments, get rid of these goats that we've put into our life, and go back home to Godhead, where we can really appreciate the original position that we had with God in the first place. Just like that lady appreciated her home in the first place, the way she had it before she brought the goats into her home. So this mood of devotional service is the only difference in being envious or seeing the world in Samadarshinaha, in love. The scripture says one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, in such a mood, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So this mood of humility, this mood of tolerance, this is what's going to get us past this envy and into this state of love, of Samadarshinaha, of equal vision. There's many different aspects of God. Three prominent aspects of God are his energy. The energy of God pervades the entire universe. But that energy has a source. The source of that energy is a personal source. So when we look at God, we can have different perspectives on who God is. We can look at the energies and we can recognize God in the sun. We can recognize God in the plants and the animals and this earthly material substance that we're going through. We can recognize his spiritual energies and we can perceive those. Eventually, though, if we develop this love of God, we develop this mood of attachment to him, this connection with him, we're going to be able to perceive him in his personal form and be able to have a personal, loving, devotional relationship with him. So different forms of God inform our perceptions of who God is and what our relationship with him is. These are called different aspects of God, and we understand those aspects according to our perception. The Bhagavad Gita, anyone read the Bhagavad Gita out there? A few of you have, some of you haven't. Bhagavad Gita essentially is a story of a warrior that goes into this horrible battle, and he has this horrible attitude of fear about going into this battle because he's got to fight cousins and family and teachers on the other side of the battlefield. And he doesn't want to do this. And so he goes to God, who's his chariot driver, and he says, God, I want out. I just want to go into the forest, and I want to serve you. And God says to him, but you're a warrior. Your duty to society is to protect society. You need to do your duty. You need to do your job. But do it in a mood of service. Do it with a perception of serving me. Don't do it because you want to receive the spoils of the battle, the spoils of the war. Don't do it because you want to serve yourself. Don't do it because you're envious of the other people on the other side of the battlefield or even of me. Do it because you love me and you want to serve society as your duty as an offering to me. The only thing that changed in Arjuna's job of going into the battle and doing his job and fighting in that battle was his perception. In the beginning, he perceived himself as a victim that had to go into this horrible battle and do this horrible thing. But by communing with God, by conversing with God, by connecting with God, he was able to change his perception and understand that his job was to do his duty to God and to make this battle an offering to God. The only thing that changed was the mood and his perception. Imagine you find $100. Somebody gives you $100. So there's no obligation to try to find the owner. Somebody just gives you $100. According to your perception of how you want to use that money is going to change the way that you serve God with that money. If you're in a mood of ignorance and darkness, you're going to take that $100 and you're going to go spend it on some fried chicken, some Kentucky Fried Chicken. Or maybe you're going to buy some alcohol or some intoxicants. Or you're going to spend it on women. Or you're going to spend it on a lottery ticket. This is one perception of $100 and one way that you could use $100, depending on your mood. Another way, if you're in the mode of passion, you've got a little bit of gumption in you and you've got a little bit of mentality of saving and earning, you could take that $100 and you could invest it. You could put it in a bank to earn some interest, or you could buy some stocks, and you could maybe save that money and you can earn some interest, get a return on your investment. Or maybe, if you're in the mode of goodness, you'll take that $100 and you'll give a portion of it in charity to your temple, your church. You'll take a portion of it to take care of your family, to take care of the needs of a God-fearing family. Maybe you'll take a portion of it and you'll save it for a rainy day. These are all good things. Or maybe you'll just take the money and you'll give it to charity. You have all the money that you need already. You're content with your financial situation. You don't need another $100. So you give it to some good cause, some humanitarian effort. These are all good things that you could do with the money, and you can perceive the money in that way. You could take that money and you could offer it to God by engaging it in his service. Maybe you could buy some flowers for the temple. Or maybe you could use that money to buy a set of Srimad Bhagavatam. There's lots of things that you could do with $100 that could put you in a more transcendental mood. That same $100 is the same $100. The only difference in the way that $100 is employed is in your perception of it, in your mood of ignorance, passion, goodness, or transcendence. Anything material in this world can be perceived as spiritual. We have these deities up here. They could be perceived as material. They could be perceived as stone or wood or marble or gold. You can make deities out of lots of different material things, and they're only going to be material if you have an ignorant attitude towards them, or if you have an attitude of passion, or if you have that's a good cultural thing, just an appreciation, a good appreciation, or you can have a worshipful attitude towards those deities, and you can make an offering to those deities and have a connection to God through those deities. Anything material can become spiritual. So God has big plans for you if you're willing to accept them. If you can perceive the things in your life as an offering to God, then God has big plans for you, but don't talk yourself out of them. Srila Prabhupada, our founder, came to the U.S. when he was 69 years old. He had only a few rupees in his pocket. He had some dry cereal because he didn't know if he was going to be able to find something to eat here, because he heard everybody just eats meat here. He had some books that he had for sale, and he came with an attitude of humility. He told God, please engage me in your service. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how I'm going to make a difference in this materialistic land, but engage me in your service. He had an attitude of humility and an attitude of surrender. And he started a worldwide movement, a revolution that's continuing to this day that will spread throughout the world. God had big plans for Srila Prabhupada, but he could have stayed at home in the mood of, well, I'm an old man. What can I do? How can I change the world? How am I going to go to New York City, a place that I've never been to before, and start a worldwide movement? He could have stayed home in Vrindavan in a good mood and stayed at the temple, made offerings to the temple. He could have said, you know what? I'm fed up with all this. I'm going to go back to materialistic life. He could have had so many moods. He had a mood of service, and he took a big risk. So God has a plan for you. Put yourself in the middle of that plan that God has for you. Take those risks and take that mood and move through this life with the right perception, the spiritual perception. Henry Ford was famous for popularizing the idea, whether you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right. When I talk about positive thinking, I'm not just talking about wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is when you want something real bad, and so you stay at home and you just wish for it to happen. Positive thinking is you have a desire that God has put into your heart, and so you act on that desire, and you serve based on that desire. And whether you think you can do that desire, or whether you think you can't, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy based on your own practice and connection to God and your way of putting into practice God's plan for you. So here in the temple, we have this spiritual atmosphere. There's a peaceful feeling when you come to the temple. It's the beauty, the aesthetic, the animals, the organic gardens, the nice people that you meet. All of this is meant to create an atmosphere, a spiritual atmosphere, where you can perceive spiritual things. We're still in the world. We're still in Spanish Fork, Utah. We didn't leave the world, but we've changed the perception through our atmosphere, through the people that we're associating with, through the things that we're seeing, that we're engaging our senses in, That's the only difference in living in this material world and living in the spiritual world, is changing our atmosphere around us by associating with people who make us want to be in a spiritual mindset, and by going to spiritual places, associating with spiritual things, and connecting with spiritual things. The only difference between being in this room and being in some club where there's intoxication and all sorts of distasteful things is the atmosphere that we're in and what we're associating with. So surround yourself with spiritual things, and those spiritual feelings, those spiritual moods, those spiritual perceptions will come out of your atmosphere that you find yourself in. We have different perceptions of different relationships. Within this world, we can be, if we find somebody that's spiritually more advanced than we can, then we can approach them in a mood of discipline. We can become their disciple. That's where the word discipline comes from, is by being a disciple. So you find somebody that's in a spiritually advanced position, and you try to serve them in a spirit of discipleship. If you find somebody that's more or less on your same spiritual level, you fraternize with them in a spirit of friendship. And you have a mood of friendship with like-minded people that can help you advance spiritually. If you find people that are maybe not as advanced as you don't judge them, but you associate with them and you give them some mercy. You teach them what you know. You bring them up to a better mood in their society, in the society. And if you find people that are just completely against God and against everything that you're trying to do by bettering your life, by coming to the temple, then you just avoid those people in your life. Now, you can't cross those moods. You've got to have a little bit of perception. I told you at the beginning, you got to have samadarshina. You got to see everybody as the same. But that's for very, very, very advanced spiritual people. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to get to, is to see everybody exactly the same. But as we're advancing, until we get there, we've got to have a little bit of discretion. We've got to have a little bit of judgment to be able to know how to associate correctly with different people. So if you find somebody that's more advanced than you and you try to associate with them in the mood of friendship, then you're not going to have the right kind of relationship with them. If you find somebody that's less advanced spiritually than you and you become their disciple, well, you're going to learn a lot of bad habits from somebody like that. If you find somebody that's very saintly, very advanced, and you try to avoid them because you want to keep enjoying the world in the way that you want to enjoy it, then you're also not going to advance. If you find somebody that you should be avoiding, but you become their friend, you're going to, through their association, take off their bad qualities as well. So you got to go through this world with the goal of seeing everybody equally, of perceiving all living entities on the same spiritual platform, but with the discretion and the judgment until you get to that point of learning how to discern different people and how to have different moods of relationship between different people, different perceptions of our relationships. One of the things I like to do is go to festivals and go to book tables and book booths, and I like to distribute Bhagavad Gitas and other spiritual literatures. I like to tell people about the literatures. I like to explain what's in the books and give them these literatures and ask them to give a donation in return so that we can keep giving out more books. I encounter a lot of people with a lot of different perceptions when I do this. Sometimes people see me dressed like this, and they figure, oh, that's a religious fanatic, I'm going to steer clear of him, not going to talk to him. And they lose out on the spiritual information that I can give them. Sometimes I talk to somebody and have a really wonderful spiritual conversation, and we have a good talk. And I find, this is somebody that I can relate to. This is somebody that I would like to form a friendship with in the temple. And I sincerely invite them to the temple so that I can have a continuing relationship with them in a spiritual atmosphere. Some people I can see are struggling with things in their life that maybe I've already gotten past. And so I say, this book has a scripture with what you're talking about. And I show them a specific scripture and I explain it to them. And I can associate with people in these different moods. The people that are actually speaking in the scripture, those are the people that I'm trying to be a disciple of. And that's the mood in which I try to distribute their literature. Some people have a very receptive attitude. Some people have a very avoidant attitude. Some people have a collegial friendship attitude. Whatever attitude you approach spiritual things and spiritual people with is the attitude that's going to help you progress or digress according to your situation. So what are the things that affect our perception? An agitated mind, darkness or ignorance, unequal vision, clouded judgment. These are all things that come into our life when we live a life disconnected to spiritual things and spiritual people. What are things that bring clarity into our life? The torchlight of knowledge, good teachers, intelligence, humility, gratitude. Approach the world, perceive the world in these moods, and you'll gravitate more towards spiritual things. The supersoul is within the heart of all living beings. It says in Scripture, Tesham satakta yuktanam, bhajatam pritipurvakam, vadami buddhi yogutam, yenamam umpayantate, tesham avanu pankartam, aham aganadan jantama, ashayam atmabhavasto. I forgot the last line. Those scriptures said, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling within their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Essentially, the glasses, the lenses that are going to help us see most spiritually, most clearly in this world, is God within the heart. We can have good teachers, we can have good books, we can have good association, we can have a good environment. All of these are things that are external to us that put us in the mood in which we can then perceive God within our own heart. And in that way, we can connect with God. So does anybody feel overwhelmed by the information that I just gave to you? You've got to memorize scriptures. You've got to associate with good people. You've got to do all of these things. You've got to see the world with equal vision. That's a pretty tall order. If you're still feeling overwhelmed, go home and get a goat. Bring it into your life. Or better yet, recognize the goats that are in your life right now. The things that are causing chaos, that are causing disturbance in your mind. The things that are keeping you from being in spiritual association so that you can recognize the clarity that God is putting into your heart. And through humility and gratitude, understanding what God has put you into this world to do so that you can put yourself into the middle of that service and see the world more clearly, get to that Samadarshana, and have that spiritual vision and perception in your life. So if anything that I said today was helpful in any way, please raise your hands with me and repeat with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Now we're all going to stand up, and we're all going to offer the elements of the earth to the deities.